Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of Hands Across the Water, our generational podcast that we do here with my two co-hosts, Andy Nicholes from the Two Legs podcast. How you doing, Andy?
All right, Tone, and doing pretty good.
And my other co-host, Carl Hand. How are you doing, my friend?
It's a better day than usual. If you clicked on this thumbnail, you probably already know why.
Yes.
It is indeed. We have just had a fantastic interview with Wings' first drummer, Denny Seiwell, and talking about his new book. And he gave us more than we were even hoping for, I think. And you're going to really enjoy this video. He covered so many different aspects of his life. He talked about his period with Wings mostly during this interview. He also mentioned that he has heard a couple of tracks from Paul's new album, and we won't spoil it for you, but let's just say it sounds very positive. What did you think, Kyle?
It was a dream come true to talk with Denny. I think that everybody's going to love it. I think that our approach was really just to lean back and just let him run, because you could just see the stories like bubbling up in his head of just another story, just little. If you like the McCartney Legacy book, you'll like this for similar reasons. Just that you're like a fly on the wall to the most like random but intimate moments of Paul's life. Some of them involving picking up dog poop. So, so get ready for that. So if you like this one, I really hope that you share it with a friend, share it with somebody in a different generation to match our theme. But Andy, what were some of your highlights?
Really kind of hearing Paul, how him and Paul have reconnected recently was one of my favorite parts of it. And that they are close again, and just the journey that the two of them had gone on. And that really comes across very well in the interview. Denny is very proud of his time with Wings, because it was very much a beginning. Like as you'll see, he's like, we were just all in together. There was no egos. They were just starting from the ground up. And it was just a wonderful conversation and a great interview with lots of little tidbits here and there. Again, about the new album. Wait till you hear that part. Your jaws are going to drop when you get to that part of the interview.
The Man on the Run documentary.
Man, yeah, he mentions the Man on the Run documentary, his own book, and the tour.
And he also talks about the legendary Band on the Run demos in Scotland that they did in Scotland. So it's all here, folks. It's all here.
It's all here. Oh, you said it. It's all here.
But he was such a great guest, wasn't he? Because we had a list of questions, but he just talked. We didn't even need to ask them because he covered like 80% of the things that we had ready without it.
We had a shared doc of notes that we were going to look at, but he, as Tony mentioned, he covered about 85% of it anyway, so we didn't really have to even go with it. So when you're watching this episode, we recorded it on Zoom, so it's not going to be like, you're not going to see like a quad view. You're going to see Denny mostly on screen, and then us interjecting when we wanted to ask another question. So it's like 85% Denny Seiwell on screen for the whole episode, which isn't a bad thing at all.
No.
I also think that it perfectly fits the theme of our intergenerational podcast, because famously, I'm in my 20s, Andy's in his 40s, Tony's in his 60s, and now Denny rounds out the square. He's in his 80s.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are very proud. We are very proud of this episode, and I want to give a real big thank you to Roseanne and to Caitlin Larkin of the Beatles channel for this hookup and this contact to do this show. Thank you, Roseanne, and thank you, Caitlin. Caitlin, we'll pay you back in Nashville. You know what I mean. So,
okay.
Here's the episode. Enjoy it, and we're so proud of it. And again, Denny Seiwell, from the bottom of our hearts, on behalf of Beatley Tone and Kyle, thank you so much.
Buy his book.
Denny, tell us a little bit about the book and how it came to be.
Well, a fellow by the name of Rob Wallace, he runs Hudson Music. Rob, how did that happen, actually? He's just released a book on Jeff Porcaro, Steve Gadd, and Liberty DeVito, all great friends of mine. So, Hudson Music, used to be their main thing was videos, drummers' videos in the 80s and stuff. And they started moving over to having drummers, famous drummers, do their life story. And I always wanted to write mine, but I didn't want to write it and then have to shop it like a record deal, you know.
Mhm.
So Rob just I don't know how we ended up talking one day, and he said, would you like to write your life story? And I said, I think I would, yeah. And so he said, well, we'd like to give you the opportunity. So I went, okay, here's a chance to really set the record straight and do it in a nice and gentle way too. There's not a lot of negativity in this thing. And the book is not just about my years with McCartney and Wings.
No.
It starts in my early days and right through the New York session days, which is really interesting, I think. And to afterwards, the after Wings, and thinking that the world was ready for me and waiting for me to show up in California and become the hot session guy out here again. It just wasn't, you know. In fact, there were times like I worked for Leon Russell. Leon called me up and said, would you come play with me for a little while? And I said, are you kidding? Sure, I'd love to play. He said, I didn't think I could get you because you were Paul McCartney's drummer. I went, what? So it's funny how that stuff worked against you. Back to the book, you know, so it deals with all of that stuff. And then there's a part of the book that deals with after Wings, when I realized that I'd kind of, I shouldn't say it this way, but I kind of messed up leaving that situation without sitting down with Paul, and we were like really buddies at that point. We'd been in the trenches together for a long time, and I never really sat down and said there's an issue that's not being addressed, and I think everybody knows what that is.
Sure.
And so the realities came upon me, and then it was tough to get into the LA session world, and I wasn't doing so well, and I started drinking. And I didn't know that I had any alcoholism in me, but boy, I was off to the races with it, and I dealt with it, and so the book deals with that too. That period of my life, that's why it's the best and worst of times.
And it really is an amazing journey when you think about it, because everybody likes to just pigeonhole that period, but your life and your relationship with Paul has come so full circle with where you're at with him now, and it's a wonderful journey to watch where you guys, because everybody likes to just pigeonhole and say left wings, but where you guys have reconnected and gotten so close again is so awesome and beautiful, because it really is it's a spirit to the relationship you have with him, even though you went like this with him and here you are back, and it's just like great to see now as you guys are in this period of your lives.
Yeah. Well, I remind him he's older than I am. He's 83 and I just turned 82. Oh no, in July I turned 82. But yeah, he's got me by a year. And
Yeah.
it was really wonderful when he'd come to town. Oops.
There you go.
Easy on the hi-hat.
He invited us down because my wife and I, you know, we got married in 1966. And I think he got married to Lynn in 69. So we had more time in grade than they had. But, you know, our relationship, mutual relationship, you know, with musicianship and songs and all of that was one thing. But also that we'd had a relationship all of this time was another thing that Paul respected. And so he used to invite it. When he come to town, he was working on his solo record. He called us down to, actually, I'll tell you this good story. He called us down to hear some of the new tracks at A&M, which is now called Henson's, I believe.
Right.
So anyway, it's a nice control room. It's just Paul, my wife, and I, the engineer, and the producer, Andrew Watt. So Andrew's this hot young guy, you know, but he's so Paul's out in the studio working on some sounds that he's on the piano, some links that he wants to put together and stuff. and he sees us come in, and he comes in, and we give big hugs and nice reunion, talk about the old days, you know. And he played us a couple of tracks, and one of the tracks was just, it was one of those sentimental tracks that really touched back on the full history of all of our years together and everything. And he looked over at my wife, Monique, and she had tears in her eyes. And then he looks at me and he starts welling up, and I'm welling up. And all of a sudden, the three of us are having a big group hug. And Andrew's going, oh my God, this is history, man. I mean,
Wow.
it was truly amazing. And then the songs were beautiful. I can't wait to hear this solo record when it comes out. I think it's going to be one of his, if not his best effort. Not
So, Denny,
better than Ram.
I, of course, naturally, I have a theory about this new record that a lot of people love Flaming Pie because Paul was very inspired by Anthology and how long, all looking back when he was making that. Could you say whether the Wings documentary has any similar effect on this upcoming album?
You mean The Man on the Run?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet.
Well, do you think that Paul kind of looking in the past informed his creative approach to this new album at all?
Probably so. Yeah, I would think so. Because, I mean, we talked shortly after Denny Lane passed. I'll never forget this. My wife and I were in the car, and we stopped at Gelson's to pick up some fancy cakes to go visit some friends. And we were sitting in the parking lot, and Paul called, and we talked for a good 20 minutes. And it was about the passing of Denny, and how we just reminded each other that, yeah, I'm the only guy left from the original band.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a very, very sensitive time, and we kind of both made a commitment to stay a little closer, and that we did. And then the next time, I mean, I'd really like to hear the record. I really like to see this new documentary, Man on the Run. And the producer said she was going to try to get me a copy of it. Apparently, it premiered in Telluride at the film festival this past weekend or last weekend.
Yes.
So I haven't heard much about it other than from one of the producers of the film. And Morgan, the guy that put it together or interviewed me, he was really, he understood what was going on. He got it. His questions were right on the money, and I really had a good time. That was one of my favorite interviews of all time. So he just knew what he was doing. And it was at the right moment in time. I guess it was just everything, all the stars were aligned. But it was wonderful. So I can't wait to see it. Because Ringo called me up. I see Ringo a lot. He says, "Hey, Paul was in town the other day, brought it over, and we played it for us. You look great in this." I went, "Well, how come Ringo saw it and I don't see it? He's not even in the damn thing."
Well, you have been like in like the documentary world. I mean, Billy Joel has a brand new documentary out, and so it goes. And you're featured in that because of your playing on this record, which is my favorite Billy Joel record, and you're on this one too. So it's like you're in documentary. You're all over the place right now, man.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Did they ask you about the whole Wings era, or did they, concentrate on something specific for the documentary?
It was the whole. I'm having a little trouble hearing you. If you guys can raise your volume just a tad, I've turned mine up. No, it was about the Wings period. Morgan really had his stuff together, man. He knew what questions to ask, and led me right into it was easy to talk about the Wings that whole initial Wings period that went from taking this set of drums behind me here, these old black Gretches from 1964. Paul calls maybe 3 months after Ram was released, and he said, "Hey, how would you and your wife like to come over to Scotland and just hang out for a little bit?" And I said, "That sounds good, because we can go down to south of France and see my wife's parents and everything." So yeah, we'll take a vacation. I just made a ton of money on the Ram album, union money, you know. So he said, bring some drums along. And I threw these together. This is my 1964 Gretches. They were on the plane with me. I took them on the plane with me. They didn't want to let me in the country. They thought I was some crazy, some fan that was going to go up and bother a Beatle. And I said, no, no, no. I mean, we got an invite from Paul, they still wouldn't let me in the country. And what was it, the airport in Glasgow?
Tony
China.
would know. He's over there.
Yeah, I
Presswick Airport.
Presswick, that was it, yes.
Yeah.
And so I said, look, here's his number. Call him up. So he calls Paul up. And Paul said, yes, I sent for him. And he sent a van to pick us up, and we got in this van. And that's where it started, because I just thought it was a vacation, but in that next period of time, he said, I miss my old band. I would like to put a band together. Are you in? And I said, I'm in. Hugh McCracken came by and Hugh said, you're getting the whole deal now. So he said, can I sleep on this? So he went back to the hotel in Campbelltown, the Argyle Arms Hotel. Hot water bottle between your legs. It was that.
Whoa!
Oh, and he talked to his wife, and he came back the next day, and we went up to the farm together, and he said, I said, I'd really love to make music with you, but I can't commit to something like that. And Paul was shocked. So was I. So was I, because we just had a great time doing Ram. And for years, that mystery just stayed. And then a couple of years before Huey died, I was in New York and I went up to see him in his apartment, and we were talking about those dates. And he said, yeah, I never got a chance to tell Paul that I had a prior marriage and I had young kids and I didn't want to miss their growing up. And when I told Paul that story, he was, man, it was like somebody took a weight off of him. Because you know the way he is. He's a family man. And so anyway, that was really great. And then Wings started. And when Huey said, no, I can't do that. I said, well, maybe we'll just go back to New York and I'll let you get your thoughts together. And within a week or two after we went back to New York, he said, come on back to Scotland. I have Denny Lane coming in. We're going to put a band together, and that's going to be Wings. So I said, fine. And we went back and we were excited. Here we go. And I didn't know who Denny Lane was or anything. Of course, I knew his hit record, but and some of the work that he'd done, but I didn't know him as a man. So we started in, and man, it was just out at that rude studio, which is a lean-to on the barn, and had the old Dick Swetnam 4-track in there, and we just started rehearsing and fooling around. And before you knew it, I mean, he had enough songs to make Wildlife, and that Wings came out.
It's interesting though, because like Ram, for me, with your involvement, to me is like that's the beginning of Wings, right? Because you and Paul had that bond, you did, and you jammed on Road All Night, and you jammed and jammed and jammed. Like, to me, the foundation of Wings is Ram, and that's you and Paul connecting at that point.
It is.
Yeah.
That's
And the fact that he's asked you, and he's also asked Hugh, that was kind of what he envisaged as the beginning of Wings, I guess.
Yeah. Originally, we had talked about something. I don't say this in many interviews, so I don't think I did talked about this, but we talked about putting like a super group together. And it was going to be McCracken, me, Paul Harris on keyboards, piano player who worked with John Sebastian and and he worked with what's the Manassas? That was another. Anyway, he was a busy session guy that we worked with a lot in the studios. Huey and I did anyway, and we thought that'd be great to have him there. That's when Paul pulled the big surprise out of the hat and No, Linda's going to play piano. Does Linda play piano? No, but I can teach her everything she knows. And at that point in time, I'd seen miracles with what Paul can do when he sets his mind to it. And I thought, well, this could be great. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, there was no sort of resentment, because obviously as a session musician, you're technically very good, and obviously Linda is a novice at that point. Was there any sort of thoughts about why am I in a band with a novice keyboard player or
Oh
anything
no, we
like?
never thought about that at all.
No, okay.
Yeah, of course there were. Of course there were. Come
Yeah, of
on.
course, yeah.
Well, you mean we got to carry this rock around with us? It's like we're trying to swim here, and this rock is weighing us down, and we're trying to fly. If it's going to be, we didn't have the wings. Wasn't even, trying to fly. We're going to fly like right to the bottom. But no, we were concerned, and God bless her. She really did her best, and over time. She came around. I'll never forget the first gig that we played was geez, now I
Was it
can't
not
think.
Nottingham University?
Nottingham,
Yeah.
yeah. It was
Yeah.
Nottingham. It was a lunchtime concert, I think, or maybe it was later in the day. But we set up and we played in the lunchroom, and Wildlife started out with Linda, doom, doo, 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 and she forgot it.
Yeah.
She forgot how to start the song off. And Paul said, we stopped. And Paul went over to her and he showed her the part. Said, okay, take two. Here we go. And then it was golden after that. But she had a big task ahead of her. She knew it.
Yeah.
And we all knew it. And we all kind of chipped in to make that as easily accomplished as we could.
Mm.
Denny, that reminds me of a quote from the Wildlife book that comes with the archive set that came out, where apparently you said that Paul never had as much fun with any other version of Wings. Could you tell us some stories of why that's true?
I mean, we were in the trenches, We went out on that university tour and thinking, well, everybody's going to say this ain't as good as the Beatles. Why is he doing this? Blah, blah, and it's true. I mean, this is we were skeptical about how the press and the world was going to see us, and are we doing the right thing here?
And sorry to interrupt, but because of that, did you feel the weight of responsibility that you were?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you have a legacy to follow like the Beatles? Give me a break.
Yeah.
And you have a novice on, one of the four of you is a novice, but the other one is Paul McCartney. And he pulled it off. We were in the trenches, as I said, he drove the van some of the times. A lot of the times he drove the van, the wives and the kids were in the back with the dogs and and it was we'd stop at in Hull. I remember we went up to Hull and there was a house out in the country outside the city or the town, whatever it was, and they had a fish and chip shop in it. We'd stop in there and have fish and chips or a chip buddy or we were a very sane rock and roll band. There wasn't massive drugs. We had a little bit of smoke here and there, but it wasn't every day, and we weren't big drinkers. Henry did his share of drinking a little bit more than some of us did, but it was a pretty tame situation. And Linda was always backstage, so there were no groupies around. It was my wife was on the day that we left on the university tour. I went up to the house and took a cab up there, and I said, Paul said, well, where's Monique? What do you mean, where's Monique? So he said, well, she's coming along. I said, she's coming along on the tour? He picks up the phone, he calls her, and she was down in South Ken where we lived. And he said, "Come on, pack a bag and get up here. You're coming along on the tour." She said, "Really?" And so she did, not knowing that he was kind of counting on her. We were so bare bones. He was counting on her to keep an eye on the kids while we were on skate. And so, because the kids love Monique, everybody loves Monique, you know. So anyway, she left our cat with the neighbor, grabbed a bag and just took a cab up to Cavendish, and boom, we set off on the tour. So there were so many memories of that none of the other bands, you know, the later versions of Wings. I mean, I speak to this guy, Jeff Britton,
Yeah.
Yeah.
came right after me. It took Paul almost a year after I left the band to replace me. I thought that's kind of bizarre. And I thought that he hated me for doing so,
Right.
for leaving the way I did. So about a year or two later, I was in Paris with Stephen Stills. And this is all in the book too. I played with Stephen's wife at the time was Veronique Sanson, the wonderful French artist. We did a big show at the uh, Paris Olympia Theater for ORTF, and we had a small orchestra, and we did 4 nights, I believe. And after that, Stephen said, "Hey, let's go up to London and see Paul." And I went, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm welcome anymore, you know, because I just walked out on him. So I called him up and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He says, "Oh, we're fine." He says, "How are you and Monique?" I said, "We're fine. We're here in Paris with Stephen Stills, and Stephen wants to come up and just say, hey, maybe have some dinner together or something." He said, "Come on up. We'd love to see you."
There you go.
So, you know, that blew my mind, first of all. And so we went up. We had a lovely evening with them, and there were so many stories the early days with Wings. I can't imagine. I know Steve. Uh, Steve,
Holly, Steve Holly.
Steve Holly.
Holly.
Steve
Yes, I
Holly.
love this guy, by the way. Here he is. He gets my gig. He's got a French wife like me and every, you know. But and then I got to play with him at a couple of Beatle Fests where we did double
Yes.
drums together. He's
Awesome.
just a sweetheart, one of the best guys on the planet, great singer, and a great drummer.
Yeah.
And Joe English too was really one of those special. I met him a couple of times, not as much as I knew Steve though. So, but yeah, I mean, those early days, who knew that it was going to blossom into this thing that we just thought we're going to hang in there and do this for Paul, because we knew we weren't getting paid,
Yeah.
uh, like like we were used to getting paid anyway. But the promise was there that we would share some of not some, we would have an equal share in the royalties when all of the problems got worked out. The problems didn't exist when we formed the band, but over time, the Court receivership and all that stuff appeared. And yeah, it was difficult. It was difficult, but the stories were worth every penny of it. And everybody in that band made a full commitment to Paul and to put that Wings to make that, you know, when we first joined the band, when we first set up the band, Paul figured out a name, and then he'd have us go into the press office once a week or sometimes more. He didn't want it to be known as Paul McCartney and Wings.
Mm.
He really wanted this band to be called Wings, like the Beatles. And we make the word mean something, and he wanted the public to know each and every one of us
Yeah.
and learn our personalities and everything. So
Yeah, because I
I think that
noticed
was a slick move.
the advert for Wildlife that went out to the music papers at the time had, you know, obviously the picture of the sleeve, and then underneath the new album featuring Paul McCartney, Linda McCartney, Denny Seiwell, Denny Lane. So each of you is all getting a mention. Did when the label forced the band name to change to Paul McCartney and Wings, how did you feel about?
I didn't even. That was done It was done behind our backs kind of deal, but I just figured it was a business thing that meant more money for everybody.
Hmm.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
we didn't
Well,
really care. In fact, Paul, the promoters, when we first started going out, they said, geez, if we could sell a lot more tickets if we put your name on the bill.
yeah.
And he was hesitant, and at first we didn't do it. But by the time, I don't remember, was it just before the European tour or?
Probably was probably right before the European tour, like right around My Love, when My Love came out and all that stuff.
That
And
would make sense, yeah.
um, Denny, tell us about working with Glenn Johns during the Red Rose Speedway sessions, and we know he walked away from them. Did you work with Glenn previously or after?
No, no, but I loved first time I heard a playback of Glenn. First of all, he came into the studio, and I had my old black Gretches there, and he set up three mics. I said, "Where's the rest of the mics?" He said, "No, that's the way I do it." I went, "Wow, oh, this is interesting." So it was like one
Overhead.
mic up here,
Mm.
one mic back here to my right, and one microphone in front of the bass drum, like 3 or 4 feet away. And they were U87s or U67s, like really expensive mics. And what that did was those three mics blended, when the engineers sat and blended those three mics, it really gave the drummer complete control over dynamics and everything.
Mm.
And it was brilliant. It was the best drum sound I've ever gotten.
So
So
he never mic'd up any of the drums individually.
no,
Like you're like, okay.
no, no. Close miking was not his thing, and his thing worked better than anybody. It had a natural ambiance about it, a natural echo, and a natural balance where the drummer can balance. If you play the tom a little louder, it's going to come out in it was sensational. It blew my mind the first time I heard a playback, and I love Glenn. So I don't know what happened while the two of them were in the control room talking one day, but we spent a few days, and if not weeks, with Glenn, and I thought it was a great relationship, but it just didn't work out. I mean, Paul, he always talked about having somebody to help and produce his music, and nobody could produce his music the way he did.
Mm.
That's just the way. That's just Jim Garcia tried to do it with Ram.
Ram, yes. As we learned in the McCartney legacy, Jim Garcia was like, okay, this isn't going to work out. He's out. It's just
Yeah,
going to work.
Mm.
I was there for that, and
Cool.
ooh,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was not a happy camper when he left. But
I bet not. But yeah, the Red Rose Speedway concept and the band concept that Paul was trying to push is evident on that record because he was trying to push it as a double album. Record company says no, make it a single, and it really kind of changes the trajectory because the band concept, as you mentioned, you guys were all in it from the boots up,
yeah,
touring, living together, traveling together, recording together, and that was what Red Rose Speedway was supposed to represent. So now that it's trimmed down to a single album, your contributions are limited, and that's frustrating.
yeah, yeah, and we should mention Henry
Yes.
because before we went out on the university tour, uh, we all realized that we needed a lead guitar player. Not that Denny Lane couldn't do it, but if he played lead, then nobody else would be doing the rhythm stuff. So we needed another guitar player. And Ian and Trevor, our roadies, Ian Horn and Trevor Jones, um, they they suggested Henry, who was at the time playing with the Grease band, who played with Joe Cocker, and they did Woodstock together. And Henry was like uh, just a bluesy uh, rock guitar player. And he came in one day. We were rehearsing. I don't know. We called it the Duke of York Steps.
Mm.
It was some fancy building down there in London. It was a government building, I guess, but there was a small theater in it, and that was our rehearsal spot. So Henry came in and he started playing with the band that day, and we all looked around at each other and smiled and said, "That's the guy." And it was that easy. Henry just fit in like the missing piece that we needed. So God bless Henry. I mean, I really miss him. He was my mate we just bonded, and sometimes it was us against the world, But no, we had some musical wants that Paul addressed beautifully, though, in the show. He would give Henry's Blues or a couple other things that we put into the live show that where we would feature Henry, and everybody loved that, So yeah, the stories. I could just go on forever talking about those early days on the road and how we came through it. We used to sit in little hotel rooms up in north of England where we'd hear the playback of the cassette of the show earlier. We'd come up there and we had to leave the door open to the room because the room was so small. So we'd sit around on the beds, get a cassette player out, listen to the late night show, and have a few beers or whatever. And it was just there was one hotel where they had a night guy. His name was Cyril, and he was absent of hair, should we say? Uh, but Cyril looked like he was one chip short of a taco plate too. Uh, but that's why he had the nightstand. But he came up one night with this little sand pail and a shovel. He said, one of you guys got the black and white dog? He's been running around the hallway. Well, he's shat in the hallway, and you're gonna have to clean it up. So Paul went over and cleaned up Lucky's poop in the hallway. Uh, so there were another one was like one morning we get up and I believe it was a university. It might have been the next the European tour. But Heather, the oldest daughter of Linda, not Paul's daughter, but Linda's daughter, she came knocking on everybody's door. She says, get up, pack up. We got to get out of here. The cops are on their way. And I said, what the hell was that? So we packed it, went down to the lobby, got into the van or the bus, whatever it was. And I found out that Paul was having a little disagreement with the innkeeper, and somehow his elbow connected with the innkeeper's face. And so he'd called the cops on us. And so I believe, Paul says no, but I believe that's where Band on the Run came from.
Mm.
Who knows? Who knows? But there were just story after story of, Paul Dacker, the guy that wrote the story on us after we got busted in the European tour. His father did the same thing with the Beatles, but this guy came on right after we got busted for weed, and he said, "I'm not going to write about your show, the music, or the drugs. I'm going to write about how you travel as a family." And we said, okay. Paul said, I'll give this guy a shot. So we invited him along to a sound check that night. He came to the sound check. He was there for half the sound check and he left. And next week, when the article came out, he'd given a full concert review, song for song, without being there.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, no, he slagged us all the way, it was like he had an agenda. And so at the time, Stella was a little baby. And when you stay in some of those little hotels, they have these little Queen Elizabeth soap dishes and a little plastic tub for the soap. Well, Linda got one of Stella's turds and put it in the soap dish and sent it off to this Paul Dacker guy.
you bring up a great point there with the journalism factor in the 70s. Everybody, it seemed, had an agenda in the 1970s post Beatles breakup, that Paul was a villain and John's a hero. And
Yeah.
taking the Mickey out of his band, whether they're lightweight or pop, was just the in vogue thing to do, and say it's soft, it's crap, it's not anything, it's not the Stones, it's not the Who or Zeppelin. And it was really unfair bias by these journalists. Paul just wanted to go out and start his own thing, and
Yeah.
journalists could not look at that objectively in the 70s, and you guys knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was difficult. But there were, for all the bad ones, there was a lot of good ones too. People saw the possibilities of that band, and I believe that none of the other bands when they started out the way we did. There was something there. I mean, if you just listen to the box set that came out with the Red Rose, not well, yeah, it would have been Red
Yeah.
Rose Speedway too. There's a lot of Paul resurfaced a lot of live stuff that was recorded with the Stones 16 track mobile truck.
Mhm.
And it was pretty rough when we'd heard it, but Paul spent a little bit of time cleaning that stuff up. And when I heard that live performances, I went, whoa, this was really, we had become a band.
Yes.
So that was the second tour. Then the third tour was the British tour. Man, we were just in there with that was a rockin' tour, man. We were really doing the music had had all the elements, the rock stuff, the McCartney, uh, the Blue Blackbird, and all of that. It had all the elements of what McCartney was about, and the band, not just about McCartney. We were pretty proud of what happened to it. So I can really see where we were rehearsing Band on the Run up at the farm in Scotland, and then Henry left, and he just Paul wanted him to do something. He just got tired of saying, "No, I don't like doing that," and he left, and then uh, I wasn't planning to leave by any means. I pleaded with Paul to break in a new guitar player, and so we could go as a band. We had become a unit. And he just wouldn't see it. He says, "No, they got us a studio. They built a studio just like EMI in London down there in Lagos, and we're gonna go down and do the record, and we'll just do it like overdubs like Ram." And I thought, geez, after all of this time and sweat and putting this thing together, I mean, it's just like we're stepping back, not forward. So that's when I decided to. Maybe it's time for me to leave. That was a hard, hard, hard decision. One that I don't have many regrets in my life, but I have regrets in that decision. And that was a tough thing to do.
Because of what Wings went on to achieve as a band.
No, I didn't know.
Or-
Yeah. They didn't reach any of the heights that we reached, I thought. That's the way I felt about it. That's
Mhm.
Okay.
but
Because you're looking at it from the ground up, all in together as a unit, starting from scratch to build something.
yeah,
Yes, they might have achieved commercial success, but
right.
you're looking at it in terms of like, hey, we're just starting out and figuring out where we're going here. So you
Yeah.
saw that growth from nothing to now you're playing all over Europe, you're playing in the UK, and you've really grown as a band. So you could look at that success that the later Wings had and be like, you know what, that's something totally different that I wasn't part of, and I can still view what I did as very successful. And that's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah.
Danny, I've always wanted to know, how do you think Band on the Run would have turned out differently if you and Henry stayed on?
Oh, that's a good question. Somewhere in the universe, there's a two-track tape that we recorded up at the barn in Low Rannigan, Paul's other property up across the hill from where his family lived. They had a beat up old farmhouse, and there was a barn next to it that had great acoustics actually. And Paul got a two-track in there, and we used to record the rehearsals as we were rehearsing Band on the Run. And it had that authenticity that I'm so sorry that Band on the Run was his biggest selling record. I really thought, oh, that's shit. I mean, that's really after all we did, that becomes the best, And he played drums on it. He played all my drum parts that I made up there in the barn. Maybe not all. He played mostly the parts that I created though, because they were right. They were right for the music. They were right for the song. Whenever I'd think about playing a drum track on a new McCartney's, I'd think of two things: how would Paul play it, and how would Ringo play it? And then I make my version of that, and that's what got me the gig. I'm sure when I auditioned for the Ram album. So.
Do you think that we'll ever hear those 2-track demos?
I don't. I would pay good money for that. I understood that Paul made a cassette copies of that when they went down to Lagos, and they were they had a little scene getting back to their wherever they were staying after the studio one night, and that was robbed. They took their cameras and some money and what have you, and passports maybe,
Mm.
and that tape, that cassette. But there's still got to be the 2 tracks somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
For the life of me, I can't figure out why Paul didn't track it down, and
No, nor
that'd
can
be a great thing. There'd be a lot of people who would love to hear that.
that's a little bit of the of a holy grail for fans to hear
Yeah.
the original, or the the first lineup of Wings playing those songs. We'd love to get our ears around those. Great. So, talking about that, because he did play the drums, on Band on the Run, and he does like to jump on the kit, doesn't he? But
Oh,
yeah,
every time I get up, he'd
yeah.
flop
So
right down on my kit. Yeah.
what I was gonna ask you is, did he give you complete freedom to create your own drum parts, or did
Always.
he give directions? Say, I want you to do this, or I want the kick drum here, or I want a floor tom
Always,
here.
except for one song.
Okay.
But he gave me complete freedom during Ram for sure.
Yeah.
And then we got to Uncle Albert, and we were recording Uncle Albert, and I think Spinoza was in on it. It was the early days. We did 2 days on that. One day with Spinoza, and then he left, or Paul asked him to leave, and then Hugh McCracken came in and redid it. So most of Paul's the guitar parts on Uncle Albert were Hugh McCracken's. So anyway, he said, "Can you find a drum part that is less steady through that, and it moves in and around the vocals?" I went, "Wow, Uncle Albert, Uncle Doom." So I thought of coming up with a little part that would be fractured, like what's the word I'm looking for here? Like stilted a little bit. Boom, jack, gadoom, ch, boom, jack, gadoom, ch. And it came quickly, and I played it on the next run through, and he went, "That's brilliant." He loved it, and that's the only time I get goosebumps thinking about it.
Wow.
That's the only time he asked me to do a certain part, or to find another part that worked, and it was like it was given to me, It's like,
Mm,
yeah.
fantastic. Good story.
I mean, Paul and I had such magic together. I'm sorry. I mean,
You did.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
us some of your memories about that James Paul McCartney special and being a part of that.
Yeah, it was fun.
There's some funny scenes. The pub scene where you're all kind of hanging out in the pub
Yeah,
with the family.
that was
Oh
a
my
little bit too long.
God.
I remember getting we finished up a long day, and the drinks were flowing, and Denny, Henry, and I got in the limo to drive back to London, uh, and we pulled out of Liverpool, and the limo driver pulls over, rolls down the window, and throws up. I said, "Uh-oh, you ain't driving. Come on, you get in the back with Denny and Henry. I'm driving home." So I was the least
Mm.
incubated. No, what was it? I'm under the alkafluence of alcohol.
Yeah.
Yes, that was the other one. I was the least under the influence, in my opinion, anyway. Even though I drove on the wrong side of the road half the time, I took us back to London, and Denny and Henry were in the back seat with this driver, and they were like putting cigarettes out on each other. They were really trashed, and so that was a long night, but it was fun, having Paul's family all there and all the sing-songy stuff, which I never felt a part of.
Right.
That's the thing I was too American for that,
Yeah, too much of a yank for that stuff.
But the special was really good. We were supposed to be talking about that on our trip to Marrakesh, there was no talking about that. We just went and had fun in Marrakesh. We didn't do shit. We
Mm.
some rich American lady with a baron for a boyfriend invited us over, and they had the drummers from the market come in and drag a sheep in there, and they said, "Hey, meet your dinner," and then they took us outside and croaked the sheep, and then they didn't want to eat it.
Yeah.
Oh, but there was another scene in that Mamunia hotel.
Uh,
This is
um,
actually the there was supposed to be a drug dealer that hung around the disco. So we thought it'd be nice to have a little bit to smoke, on vacation and all that. So
Mm.
so we saw this guy and thought that he might be the guy and invited him up to our room and they went to my room actually and we're in the room there, Denny and I and our wives and no, the wives weren't even there. It was just the two of us. And this guy gave us some of his stuff to try, and it wasn't very good. And so he got a little uppity that we didn't like it. We didn't want to buy it. So,
in the book, Denny, you've got at the close of the book, you've got a chapter called McCartney's Memories. Talk about how Paul contributed to the book to close it out for you, and how did that
oh
come out?
yeah, okay. Well, that's very near the very end of the book. Uh, I asked Paul if he would participate and give us some stuff. And he said, sure. So I asked Robin if she would interview him. So he agreed to that. And we set up an interview, and Robin called him up and just taped the whole interview. So it started off like, why did you hire Denny to be the first guy, you know, to do the Ram album and all that? So he would just talk about why I stuck out. And he called me, oh, geez, what was the word for it now? He had a, oh, geez, I'll have to read the damn book again, but he had a word for me that I was light and fun to be around. I
Mm.
forget what he called it now, but it was very sweet of him. So he just talked about our whole relationship together and why it was so easily done. And at the end, she asked, I got a chance to play with him again 50 years later, just before he left on the South American tour. And he invited my wife and I up to the rehearsal. And I was in the studio with them, tapping around on Abe's new drums. Abe was showing his new drums, and as soon as I started playing a little groove, McCartney straps on a bass and comes over, and there it was. The magic was still there.
Mm.
So when that was over, he said, "Hey, we're gonna we're gonna play Live and Let Die next on the rehearsal. I mean, can you still do that?" I said, "Can I do that?" So I was there behind the drums. He just moved over to the piano and kicked it off. And there it was. My wife filmed the whole thing. And
Oh,
it's
wow.
one of my treasures. It really is one of my treasures. So, and everybody was cheering. Paul was laughing so hard at everything that's so difficult about that song. I just ripped through it like it was butter. And he loved it. He was laughing and everybody was. It was a very. It was one of my most proud moments. And she talked about that, and he answered. So it's really the interview itself is it really puts it into perspective why it was such a special period of time and how we handled it, even with all of the problems.
Yes. Yes, such a full circle moment, man, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful to really see that come full circle with the book. And it's going to be so exciting to read when it comes out. That's awesome,
It's
Kyle.
supposed to
Another
be on
question.
September 16th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So I mentioned a keyword that you mentioned there was perspective.
Yeah.
And I feel like nowadays that we can look back at, the majority of Paul's life, that I see your period of Wings as a time when Paul was trying to find himself, asking these big questions of who am I without the Beatles? What musical directions do I want to go in? but at the same time, he's still Paul, and I'm sure he seemed very confident on top of his game. Do you think he ever kind of gave away any sort of like doubt or insecurity of where he was going?
No, and I disagree with you a little bit there.
Please.
With Paul, I mean, I've heard him talk on other interviews where he talked about some songs, some chord changes and what have you, were just magic in interviews where he talked and Paul just always had that magic. Things came to him, he made them complete, and then we played them, and that was magic. So I don't think he was trying to find anything. I think he knew all I have to do is put myself in a place where the gods or whatever can inspire me, and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing because I've been blessed with something here. So I don't think he was looking for things as much as one would think. He knew he had his direction, and he just never varied from it.
That's
Can I
beautiful.
just
And you sensed that confidence as you were working with
I
him.
did indeed. Yeah,
just take you back to the wildlife sessions? Because
yeah.
I always think of Wildlife as being an album that has got a great feel to it, even if it hasn't got amazing songs on it, but it's got a great feel to it, and that some of that comes from the drum fills, the feel of the drums on that. When you first went into the studio to record that, did Paul have complete demos and knew exactly where the songs were going to go, or did the band kind
No,
of contribute quite a lot to that because that's what gives it the feel?
it's all the band.
Right.
We rehearsed, we just got to know the chord changes, the
Yeah.
lyrics in Scotland. We
Mm.
went down to Abbey Road in London and we just went in there and recorded. We recorded, I think 5 of the 8 songs were first takes.
Wow.
You know, that one mumbo you can hear, take it, Tony. We were in there just jamming. And
Mm.
sometimes the engineers forget to hit the button when the magic is happening. So he's take it, Tony, boom, and there it was, the track. But that that album, we just knew the songs barely from
Mm.
rehearsing them in Scotland. We get in, we get a sound, and we're just doing what that band at the time did without Henry. It
Hmm.
was just jamming. It's when you have a guy like Paul McCartney at the helm, it's
Mm.
just so easy. All you have to do is open your ears.
Mm. Mm.
It is.
So it was brilliant.
It's aged quite well, and I just love that it's been reevaluated over the last decade or so. When that box set came out in 2018, and stuff like Mumbo and all that European stuff that was live. I mean, everybody was like, "Wow, that band was pretty good."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we left a mark in history. And it's just so nice to have a mark in history that reflects anything to the Beatles. I mean, geez,
Yeah,
they changed the world through their.
abs- yeah. Um, Denny, as we begin to wrap up here, I guess would you like to tell us about the trio and some of the clinics and all the stuff that you're doing right now?
Well, I kind of that's behind me.
Okay.
That's behind the trio is no longer just because I've come down with some health issues that you're 82, you got to expect them. But I can't really play live that much anymore. I can get away with a little bit, but not a lot. So I'm still producing records where I
Hmm.
go in the studio here and do a track and go in the studio and listen to it and like that. So I just produced an album with a friend of mine named John McAndrew, and it's called the Better Side of Me, and it's really a good record. Um, it's coming out. It's out on Quarto Valley Records. It's really good. Just my producing partner is a guy named Fernando Perdomo, who
Yep.
and we used Fernando's studio, and it's just the 3 of us working on it. Then I had a friend like Steve Picaro put an orchestra on one of the tracks, and I'm really proud of this record. It's a slice of Americana. So I'm doing some production. The trio is kind of on hold. If we ever got a chance to, we have a record out on Quarter Valley Records as well, and it's called Boomerang.
Hmm.
That I'm quite proud of. It's more of a jazz influenced and samba influenced version of that trio. But one of the organ guy moved away, and it's just so hard to get him to come back and do any more recording with it. So that's kind of a thing of the past. But I'm starting a new project tomorrow, I think it is, with a girl from Liverpool named Jessie Morel.
Okay, that's cool.
She's a wonderful new artist that Fernando found this girl, and she got our attention with doing some Beatle tracks. We just heard voice and a piano, and as demos. I guess we're going to cut Milo again tomorrow, and her version of it. And so it's really nice to be able to groom and use I've worked with some of the finest producers Paul McCartney, Joe Cocker, Leon Russell, let alone guys like Andrew Loog Oldham
Sure.
and Phil Ramone and people like that. I just took all of that information and I just locked it away for the day that I can't be as active musically as I'd like. I can become active production wise.
Tell everyone when the book's out and where they can buy it.
Oh, yes. I'm bad at this, but I know that it comes out September 16th. I think it's in October that it's released in the UK. I'm not sure of that, but it's on Hudson Music. And if you go to hudsonmusic.com, there's a link there. You just write Denny Seiwell book and it comes up. The
Yep.
book. Yeah.
So
And the link,
Or
yeah, the link for that will be just below. So if you want to, if you're watching this episode, the link for Hudson Music is on there. It's not on Amazon in America yet, but it is on Hudson Music. Do you know if it's going to be on Amazon?
I believe someone told me that it was because
Okay.
somebody got a complete review of the album on Amazon through Amazon, and it even had a list of the chapters.
Right. Well, that's on the Hudson Music website, which we have right now.
Okay.
That's how we were able to pull up. We see
Oh, okay.
your intro is on there, your preface is on there, so there's a
Okay.
preview of your book on the Hudson Music website, and it's a really nice, heartfelt introduction.
They did a brilliant job on that, Rob Wallace and Robin Flans too. She wrote the last book on Jeff Porcaro.
Yeah.
So she really helped me and put this thing together. And it was just me remembering all of the stories that I was so fond of, and she would just put them down on paper.
And again, we are a Paul and Beatles focused podcast, but this book is about your entire journey, your whole life, and I can't wait to read more about everything you've done before Paul and after Paul, because it's your whole life story. So it's going to be a great read. Kyle, any last thoughts?
So, Denny, on this podcast, we like to play around with playlists. If you're ever have a very long car ride or something, we have a 6.5 hour podcast where we made a 100 song playlist for Paul's entire career. So under that same theme, I want to know if you could think of like a few songs that would appear on like your memories of Wings. Like what are the highlights that we could give to the listeners to embody that same joy and love that you so beautifully described in Wings?
Well, Love is Strange has to go near the top of that one. Love is Strange was our version of a reggae, and I still get emails. How did you come up with that? Then there's like Some People Never Know. I thought that's a great song. Geez, Too Many People, of course. That was wonderful. My wife just hollered from the back, "My love."
Thank you, Monique.
No, and there were a couple others that were almost missed by most people, but the real solid fans that know music, there were a couple of songs that he wrote like some people never know. You know, that was pretty special. And there was a lot of those. Get on the Right Thing.
Oh,
Get on the Right Thing was just one. I mean,
So that was from
man,
the
this man,
Ram session, wasn't
he had the Midas touch. He really did. And his songs just meant so much, and they're so memorable. I just can't see any point in history where another uh, composer is going to come up with as many memorable things. Eleanor Rigby tore me up when I first heard Eleanor Rigby, and well, the whole Beatle catalog, which I wasn't aware of. I mean, my wife lived in London in the early '60s, and I used to come home in New York from my session day, and she'd be playing a Beatles 45, and I'd say, "Take that crap off." Little did I know so I'd be playing with Paul, but I heard the White Album, and I was just that was hooked. I hooked, and yeah, I'm just so pleased that I can be a small part in the cog of the history of that whole Beatles anthology and the Wings, and that Paul is bringing all that stuff to light again. You know.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's no small part here. I mean, you played such a big part in the early foundation of Wings, and it's in the stream of public consciousness again. People are embracing it, and it's just awesome to see now, 50 years later, that younger fans like Kyle are into it and see the beauty of this music that you knew was happening at the time, that people wanted to just bury for decades. And now here it's out, and it's going to be great. And hey, Man on the Run documentary is going to be great. You're in that. Your book is out in 10 days time of this recording. It's called The Best and Worst of Times by Denny Seiwell and Robin Flans, available on Hudson Music. So, Denny Seiwell, I want to thank you very much for being here today on our episode of Hands Across the Water. Thank you for giving us some time and delving into the past to talk about your past with Paul, what you're doing now, and we really appreciate the time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Andy.
Nope,
Thanks,
no
Denny.
problem.
Thanks, Denny.
Thank you, Danny.
Talk to you soon, Denny, and be well.
I hope so. You too.
Take care.
Bye bye.